I didn't recognize her at first. But the moment she laughed, high-pitched, nasal, just the way it used to echo down the halls of Roosevelt Middle School, it all came rushing back. Her name was Cassie Turner. The girl who made me wish I didn't exist. She was standing by the mirrored bar in a hotel lounge in downtown Chicago, swirling a glass of white wine, still as poised and put together as ever. Her voice cut through the hum of chatter like a knife, her laughter still laced with that subtle cruelty I remembered from years ago. I froze. I'd come here for a charity gala, another evening of smiling for cameras and shaking hands with people who suddenly wanted to be my friends. But seeing her there, it was like being transported through time. Suddenly, I wasn't Mason Grant, the tech entrepreneur whose face was plastered on Forbes. I wasn't the guy with a net worth they debated on Reddit threads. No, I was Mason the ghost, the kid in thick glasses with a stutter and shoulder blades like coat hangers, invisible unless someone wanted to make a joke out of me. And Cassie had always loved making jokes. I was halfway through turning around, ready to disappear, when I heard it. Wait. Mason. Mason Grant. I turned back, slow, like I was stepping onto a landmine. She tilted her head, scanning me with a confused smile. You look so different. I forced a laugh, light and hollow. It's been a while. She smiled wider. Wow. I almost didn't recognize you. You were, smaller back then. I nodded, pretending I didn't hear the hesitation. What I wanted to say was, yeah, and you were cruel back then. But I just said, I guess we all change. She sipped her wine. You really did. I mean, look at you. What are you doing these days? That question. They all ask it. And they're not asking what I do, they're asking how someone like me became someone like this. They want the story, the twist, the freak transformation they can't believe they missed. I run a tech company, I said. We design AI systems for logistics and disaster response. Nothing glamorous, really. That was a lie. It was glamorous, at least the media made it look that way. I'd been on talk shows, podcasts, featured in GQ. But I wasn't going to hand her the pleasure of bragging. Cassie's eyebrows lifted. That's incredible. You were always so quiet. I smiled again, but inside, something tightened. I hated the way she said quiet. Like it meant insignificant. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even in my penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling views of the city, I felt 12 years old again. I lay in bed with memories looping like a horror reel, sitting alone in the cafeteria, my tray untouched while the other kids threw grapes and insults, hearing Cassie whisper to her friends that I looked like a praying mantis in a sweater vest. I'd buried it. All of it. Or so I thought. People see my life now and think it was always like this. They don't see the nights I did push-ups until my arms gave out, or the hours I spent watching YouTube videos on how to sound confident in conversation. They don't see the rejection emails, the failed startups, the time I had to live in my car for 3 weeks because I couldn't afford rent. They don't know that every line of code I wrote was fueled by one thought. I'll show them. And I did. I showed all of them. Every one of those kids who ignored me at lunch, who made fun of the way I looked or talked, I surpassed them. They're all working average jobs in average towns, living average lives. And I'm alone. That's the part they also don't see. I have followers, fans, people who want selfies. But I don't let anyone in. I don't let anyone close enough to see the kids still hiding behind the men. Because even now, with all this, I still hear their voices. Still hear hers. The next day, I didn't go to the conference panels. I wasn't in the mood to be inspiring. Instead, I walked the city streets with a hoodie pulled over my head like I used to back in college, when I was trying to disappear. Funny how success makes you visible, but pain still finds a way to cloak you. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me. Hello. Mason. It's Cassie. I hope this isn't weird, I got your number from the event coordinator. I just wanted to say it was really nice seeing you last night. Would you maybe want to grab coffee? Catch up. I stared at the sidewalk. Was this some joke? Another setup to knock me back down? Sure, I said. We met at a quiet little cafe on the north side, one of those rustic places with overpriced pastries and indie music playing too softly to recognize. Cassie was already there, seated by the window, wearing a soft beige coat and no makeup. She looked different. Less polished. More real. I was surprised you said yes, she admitted, brushing hair behind her ear. Me too, I said. We talked. Really talked. About college. Family. Life. She told me she got married young, then divorced. No kids. Works in marketing now. Said she burned out from chasing status. Funny, she laughed. Back then, I thought life was about who could be the coolest, the loudest. But it's exhausting. I sipped my coffee, listening. Something about the way she spoke, it didn't match the girl I remembered. Or maybe she'd changed. Or maybe I never knew the real her in the first place. Do you remember that Halloween party in 8th grade? She suddenly asked. I flinched. Yeah. I was so awful to you. There it was. I looked out the window, my jaw clenched. She continued, voice quieter. I've thought about that a lot over the years. The way we treated you. Me especially. I was a brat. And I'm sorry, Mason. I really am. The world tilted. She was apologizing. After all these years, after all the success, the therapy, the books, the talks, I hadn't realized how much I still needed to hear that. I appreciate that, I said, voice thick. She reached across the table and gently touched my hand. And that's when I realized something terrifying. My hands were shaking. I wish I could say I stayed calm. That I looked her in the eye, smiled, and accepted her apology with grace like some emotionally well-adjusted adult. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Cassie noticed. Her fingers, still gently resting on mine, curled slightly as if she wanted to give comfort, but wasn't sure if she had the right. I didn't mean to upset you, she said softly. I just thought you deserved to hear it. That you were owed at least that much. I looked up at her. And for the first time in my adult life, I saw not the girl who used to mock me in front of her friends, but a woman with regret in her eyes. And it scared the hell out of me. I'm fine, I lied. It's just been a long time since anyone brought any of that up. I know. I've been scared to reach out, honestly. She laughed nervously. You're kind of intimidating now, you know. Me. Intimidating. That word had never once been used in my direction growing up. Back then, I was the one people ignored until they needed someone to throw under the bus. The one who got blamed for group projects that fell apart. The one who got picked last in gym class, not out of strategy, but pity. Guess we've both changed, I said, trying to keep my voice even. She studied me for a moment, then said something I wasn't expecting. Do you still feel it? Feel what? I asked. That, wait. The stuff they put on you. The stuff we put on you. Does it ever go away? I didn't answer right away. Because how could I? How do you explain that even now, after all the years, all the success, all the effort to rewrite who I was, that weight still hung around my neck like an invisible chain? That I still hesitated before speaking in boardrooms, afraid someone might laugh at how my voice sounded? That I kept mirrors out of my home for years because I couldn't stand the memory of the boy looking back? I'd built an empire to prove I was worth something, and I was still afraid of ghosts. No, I finally said. It doesn't go away. You just learn how to hide it better. She nodded slowly, her gaze lowering. I get that, she whispered. More than you'd think. We talked for nearly 2 hours that day. At some point, the wall I'd built between us started to crack. I heard myself laughing, genuinely, for the first time in a while. And she was funny. Not in a sarcastic, biting way like back then, but warm and self-deprecating. She told me about her failed engagement in her late 20s, about how she'd had to start over at 30 with nothing but a cat and an unpaid internship. I thought I had everything figured out, she said. Turns out, karma's got a hell of a long memory. And I couldn't help but think, maybe this was karma. For both of us. When we left the cafe, she walked with me down the block toward where my car was parked. I'm really glad you said yes to coffee, she said. I gave a half smile. Yeah, me too. She hesitated. Would it be weird if I asked to see you again? Not for anything specific. Just to talk. I looked at her. Not the memory of her, but her. Cassie, now. A woman trying to figure things out, same as me. And for some reason I still don't fully understand, I said yes. Over the next few weeks, we met up a few more times. Lunch, walks, even a museum one Sunday afternoon. It was easy with her, in a way that both comforted and terrified me. We didn't talk about the past much, just fragments here and there. Most of the time, it was about movies we liked, weird memories from our hometown, where our families had ended up. She told me her mom had passed away a few years back, and her dad had remarried someone younger than her. I told her about my mom too, still living in the same little house I'd grown up in, pretending she didn't brag about me to every neighbor on the street. I always thought you'd disappear, she said one day, sipping tea at my place. Just vanish into some genius life. But here you are. Here I am, I said, though sometimes I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. One night, after we'd seen an old movie at the drive-in, her idea, not mine, we sat in the car while the credits rolled, quiet. I glanced at her, my heart weirdly heavy. Why now, Cassie? She turned to me, brows lifting. What do you mean? Why reach out now? After all these years? She sighed, looking down at her hands. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't care. I've carried a lot of guilt around, Mason. About you. About how I treated people. And, because when I saw you at that gala, I saw someone I used to know. And I didn't want to be the kind of person who walks past without trying to make it right. I swallowed hard. The air between us felt electric, tense, but also soft. I've spent most of my life trying to be someone you, and everyone else, couldn't ignore, I said. But it never made the hurt go away. It just made me more afraid someone might look too close and still see that skinny, broken kid underneath. She touched my arm. I don't see that kid anymore. I looked at her. Maybe I do. That night, when I got home, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for what felt like hours. It wasn't the reflection that scared me. It was how little I still believed in it. The tailored suits, the perfect jawline I'd paid for with braces and dental work, the contacts that replaced my thick glasses, they were all masks. Polished, curated masks. And Cassie, she was peeling them off. One by one. Part of me wanted to let her. The other part wanted to run. The next morning, she texted me. Cassie, want to grab brunch tomorrow? Cassie, I promise not to psychoanalyze you again. Cassie, unless you like that kind of thing. I stared at the screen. My thumbs hovered. I wanted to say yes. But my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Why did she have this power over me? Why, after all these years, could just seeing her throw me into this tailspin of emotions and insecurity? I didn't know. But I was about to find out. Because I said yes. And I had no idea what I'd just invited back into my life. I never expected brunch to feel like therapy. Cassie had a way of asking questions that slipped under my guard, like a locksmith casually picking open a safe I'd spent years welding shut. We sat at a quiet table near the back of a brick-lined bistro, dim lighting, soft jazz, too early for a crowd. I'd chosen it on purpose. Less noise, less chance of being recognized. Not that it mattered. When Cassie looked at me, she didn't see the men from magazine covers. She saw something else. Someone else. And that terrified me more than strangers wanting selfies. You always cut your food like that, she asked, sipping her mimosa. I looked down at my plate, fork in left, knife in right, slicing mechanically, each bite uniform. What, like a serial killer? I joked. She grinned. No. Like someone trying not to be noticed. I froze, my fork midair. She leaned back. Sorry. That came out weird. No, I said slowly. It's just, no one's ever pointed that out. I didn't tell her why I ate that way. That in school, I'd been mocked for chewing too loud. That I'd spent entire lunch periods pretending to eat just so no one would hear the crunch of my apple or the way I swallowed. Even now, at 34, in a $300 shirt, with a watch worth more than my childhood home, I still ate like someone was watching. Waiting to laugh. She saw it. She saw me. That should have been comforting. But it wasn't. Because with every moment I let her closer, the more fragile I felt. Like I was made of glass and she was gently tapping, testing for weak points. And she was finding them. That afternoon, I was supposed to have a call with my assistant about a potential acquisition. Instead, I canceled and walked the lakefront with Cassie. She told me about her teenage cousin who just came out as trans, and how their family was fumbling through it with awkward grace. She talked about how lonely her apartment felt some nights, and how she'd sometimes fall asleep with the TV on just to pretend someone was there. I used to think being popular meant you'd never feel alone, she said, eyes squinting against the sun. Turns out, the loudest people are often the loneliest. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She already knew. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other more and more. There was no plan to it. No agenda. Just gravity. She'd send a meme, I'd send a sarcastic reply. I'd mention a food truck I liked, she'd suggest we go. It was easy. Natural. And terrifying. Because one night, as we sat on my rooftop, looking out at the city lights, I realized something I didn't want to admit, not even to myself. I liked her. Not just in the way you like someone you used to know and now see in a different light. I liked her in the way that scared you. In the way that made you think about what it would mean to let someone stay. And just as the thought settled in my chest like a burning coal, she said something that flipped my world upside down. You know, she began, pulling her knees up onto the lounge chair, I found something the other day. From middle school. I looked over. Please tell me it wasn't my 8th grade class photo. Worse, she said with a small, guilty smile. A note. One I wrote. About you. My stomach dropped. I'd been cleaning out boxes from my dad's attic. There was this old journal. I guess I used to write stupid stuff, like passing notes we never sent. Anne. I found one about you. I'd written, Mason's so weird. He looks like a sad robot. I bet he sleeps in a coffin. She laughed, awkward and nervous. I didn't. The silence stretched. I'm sorry, she said quickly. That was horrible. I don't even know why I'm telling you. No, I interrupted. I'm glad you are. Because I needed to hear it. Not to punish myself. But to face it. That was how she saw me back then. A sad robot. A joke. A coffin sleeper. And maybe, deep down, I was still trying to prove her wrong. Still building everything I had on the ruins of that boy. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor like it held answers. My apartment was too quiet, too clean. Minimalist. Sterile. Like no one really lived there. Because no one really did. I hadn't let anyone in. Not since Erin, years ago. Not since she left with a note that said, you don't let people love you. You just let them admire the image. Cassie wasn't admiring anything. She was digging through the image, brushing away the dust, unearthing things I'd buried. And I didn't know if I wanted her to stop or dig deeper. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove back to my hometown. 3 hours of highway. No music. Just my thoughts and the steady hum of tires on asphalt. I hadn't been there in over a decade. Not since I gave my mom the down payment for her new place and told her to move somewhere cleaner, safer, quieter. But the old streets still looked the same. Cracked sidewalks. Faded chalk drawings on driveways. The scent of cut grass and damp concrete. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. My old house was smaller than I remembered. The porch sagged a little. The swing creaked in the wind. A kid's bike lay in the front yard. New owners, I guessed. Young family. I didn't knock. Just stood there. Breathing. Then, like muscle memory, my feet carried me to the schoolyard. It was Saturday. The gate was open. The blacktop still had the faint outline of the dodgeball court. The chain-link fence still rattled when the wind blew just right. I stood in the middle of it, in the same spot I used to sit during recess, pretending to read while kids played around me. I don't know how long I stood there. But I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quiet, exhausted tears for a version of me I'd spent years trying to forget, and suddenly felt desperate to honor. That boy mattered. Even if no one saw him. Even if they mocked him. Even if he ate alone every single day for a year. He mattered. And maybe, finally, I did too. I texted Cassie later that night. I went back today. To Roosevelt. The school. Cassie, why? To remember. To forgive. Cassie, did it help? Not yet. But maybe it will. A few seconds passed. Then her reply came. Cassie, you're not that sad robot anymore, Mason. You never were. I just didn't know how to see you. Cassie, I see you now. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe her. I thought going back home would close a door. Instead, it opened one I didn't even realize I'd locked. After I left Roosevelt Elementary, something shifted in me, something subtle but constant, like the hum of a refrigerator you only notice when it stops. I kept hearing the sound of my own footsteps on the playground, the creak of that rusted swing set, the distant echo of laughter that wasn't mine. I kept seeing myself there, a kid with hunched shoulders and silent eyes, holding a library book he'd already read twice just to avoid talking to anyone. And now that version of me was walking beside every step I took. Watching. Waiting. It didn't help that I was falling for Cassie. Not the high school kind of falling, messy and hormonal and reckless. No, this was slow and quiet and terrifying. It was the kind of falling that made you check your reflection before meeting her, not out of vanity but fear. What if she really saw me? What if she decided I wasn't worth seeing? She texted the day after I got back from Roosevelt. Cassie, wanna come to a thing with me tomorrow? Cassie, it's not a thing. Just a gallery opening. Friend of mine paints weird stuff. Cassie, you don't have to pretend to like it. Cassie, you do have to pretend to like my outfit though. I smiled. For the first time in days, I actually smiled without effort. I'll come. But if it's just black paint splattered on a toilet seat, I'm out. Cassie, no promises. The gallery was in a warehouse downtown. Industrial ceilings, polished concrete floors, wine glasses with stems too thin to hold comfortably. The paintings were abstract, like someone had emotions and vomited them onto canvas. Cassie looked amazing. A black jumpsuit that fit her in a way that made me nervous to be seen with her. Hair pinned up casually, a laugh that floated above the noise like music. But I wasn't the only one who noticed. Some guy walked up while we were looking at a piece titled, Echo Chamber of Shame. Ironic, really. Cassie, he said, grinning like he already owned the conversation. Cassie Landers, is that you? She turned, startled. Oh. Miles. Wow, it's been ages. He was tall. Charming. Polished in that old money kind of way, casual blazer, expensive loafers, teeth too perfect to be natural. Probably the kind of guy she dated in her 20s. Probably the kind of guy who never got laughed at in middle school. They started talking, reminiscing about mutual friends, a summer internship at some nonprofit in D.C., a wedding they both went to. I stood there, smiling politely, nodding when appropriate. And then it happened. Miles glanced at me, then turned back to her. So, he said, lowering his voice playfully, who's your friend? Your bodyguard. Cassie opened her mouth to correct him, but I beat her to it. I'm Mason, I said, reaching out to shake his hand. Just her weird little +1. He laughed, but Cassie didn't. Something shifted in her expression. She touched my arm lightly. He's not weird. He's a genius. Miles raised his eyebrows. Oh. What do you do? I build things, I said flatly. Things that make people like you richer. The tension cracked between us like glass under pressure. Miles forced a chuckle, muttered something about refilling his drink, and disappeared into the crowd. Cassie turned to me. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew the answer. Because the second that men made me feel small, I was small again. We left early. The silence in the car felt like static. "You didn't have to do that," she said finally. "Make yourself small." I stared out the window. "I didn't." "He did." She sighed. "No, Mason. You did. You shrank right in front of me. I watched it happen. And it hit me, harder than I expected. Because she was right. It wasn't just Miles. It wasn't just that gallery or that night. It was my whole life. I'd spent decades growing, building, transforming, and yet the moment someone looked at me with the same amused condescension I knew too well, I curled up like a dog that still expected to be kicked. What if I never stopped doing that? I asked quietly. She looked at me, her voice soft but firm. "Then I'll be right here, every time you do, reminding you that you're not that kid anymore." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But belief doesn't grow where fear lives. And fear had built a mansion inside me. We didn't speak for a few days after that. Not because we were mad. But because the silence felt necessary. Like we'd opened something raw and neither of us knew how to bandage it yet. I buried myself in work. Took back-to-back meetings, ran a site visit, canceled dinner plans with investors just to sit alone at a rooftop bar. I watched people move around me, laughing, living, and felt like I was stuck in a glass box, pounding at the walls, wondering why no one could hear me. Then one night, she called. Not texted. Not messaged. She called. "Can you come over?" she asked. No explanation. No context. "I'll be there in 15, I said. Her apartment was dim when I arrived. She opened the door barefoot, wearing a sweatshirt that hung off one shoulder and leggings with paint smudges on the thighs. "I'm okay," she said, seeing my face. "It's nothing like that. I just didn't want to be alone." I nodded and stepped inside. We sat on her couch. No music. No distractions. Just a candle flickering on the coffee table and her legs pulled up beneath her. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how cruel we were. Not just to you. To everyone who didn't fit. We were all just scared kids trying to climb some invisible ladder, and we didn't care who we stepped on." I didn't respond. I let her speak. "My friends back then. Most of them are miserable now. Divorced, addicted, still living in our hometown like they never left emotionally. You left. You became something." "Yeah," I said. "But sometimes I wonder if I became something just to avoid who I really was." She turned to me. "And who was that?" "Someone no one wanted." The silence between us felt like a held breath. "You don't get to say that anymore," she said quietly. "Because I want you. Not the version in the suit, not the magazine cover. I want you. The awkward, overthinking, too smart for his own good guy who still slices his food like he's under surveillance." I looked at her, unsure if I was about to cry or laugh or run away. "Cassie. I mean it," she said. "You can hate who you were, or you can forgive him. But you can't keep pretending he doesn't still live inside you. I see him. And I love him." My throat tightened. No one had ever said that to me before. Not even my mother. That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. We just sat there, two people holding space for the broken parts of each other. It was the most intimate moment of my life. And in that moment, I realized something that shook me to my core. She wasn't fixing me. She was helping me find the pieces I'd thrown away. The ones worth keeping. I used to believe transformation was linear. You start as one thing, broken, small, invisible, and through pain, determination, success, you become something else. Stronger. Better. Untouchable. But I was wrong. Healing isn't a staircase. It's a loop. You think you've moved on, that you've shed your old skin, only to find yourself back where you started, staring at the same reflection with different eyes. And sometimes, those eyes are hers. After that night at Cassie's, something inside me cracked open. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, like a frozen river beginning to thaw. She didn't ask me to change. She didn't try to fix anything. She just stayed. And for the first time, I wasn't terrified of someone seeing the version of me I'd buried so deep I forgot he was still breathing down there. We started spending more time together. Not glamorous, not performative. Real. She'd come over on Fridays, and we'd eat Thai food out of cartons while watching bad documentaries about haunted hotels. She'd laugh with her whole body, the kind of laugh that makes your chest ache in the best way. On Sundays, I'd help her rearrange furniture or carry home plants she swore she wouldn't kill this time. I felt safe. But also exposed. Because safety is dangerous when you've never known it before. It makes you wait for something to go wrong. And, of course, it did. It started with an article. Nothing special. Just another glossy feature about me in one of those upscale business lifestyle magazines. My assistant had arranged it weeks ago. I'd forgotten it was coming out. The headline read, "From Invisible to Icon, the billionaire who beat the odds." It was standard stuff, photos of my penthouse, praise for my tech investments, mentions of the charity gala I hosted last spring. But one quote stood out. And not in a good way. When asked about my motivation, I'd said something offhand that they printed in bold. No one remembers the quiet kid in the back of the class. I wanted to make sure they'd never forget me again. Cassie read it. I didn't know until she showed up at my place that evening, holding the magazine. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. But her face said enough. "You still think that's who you are?" she asked, voice low. A forgotten kid shouting into the void for attention. I didn't know how to respond. Because yes. Yes, I did. She sat on the edge of my couch, the magazine in her lap like it physically hurt her to touch it. "I'm not angry that you said it," she continued. "I'm angry because I thought you were healing. I thought you were letting it go." "I am healing," I said, too fast. Too defensive. But healing doesn't erase the past. That kid is still a part of me. "I know he is," she said. "I love that part of you. But this." She held up the quote again. "This is revenge, not recovery. This is you still needing them to see you. Still chasing their approval." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But she wasn't. And that scared me more than anything. She stayed for an hour, maybe two. We talked. Or tried to. But it wasn't like before. There was a distance now, a cautiousness to her voice. Like she was afraid of stepping on glass. When she left, she kissed me on the cheek, not the lips. It felt like goodbye. The next few days were a blur. I buried myself in meetings. I gave a keynote at a tech conference in Berlin. I attended a luxury brand event in LA. I smiled for cameras, shook hands with people who didn't know my name 5 years ago, and pretended everything was fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her eyes when she read that quote. Her silence in the elevator. The way she stood in the doorway before she left, like she was waiting for me to say something, anything, that would make her stay. But I didn't. Because I didn't know how to be the version of myself she deserved. A week passed. Then 2. I didn't call. Neither did she. And it ate me alive. Every night, I'd lie in bed and replay everything she'd ever said to me. Every laugh, every joke, every moment her hand brushed mine, and it felt like lightning instead of skin. I started second-guessing everything. The article, the quote, the way I clung to my pain like it was the only proof I'd survived. And somewhere around day 13, I finally understood. I'd built my life on the ashes of who I used to be. But instead of rising, I'd built a cage. I wasn't free. I was trapped in the very image I thought would save me. And I was about to lose the only person who ever saw past it. So I did what I'd never done before. I showed up. Unannounced. Uninvited. Unarmored. It was a Sunday. Her building had one of those buzzer systems that never really worked. I stood outside in the rain, no umbrella, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the traffic. I hit the buzzer once. Then again. Then a third time. Finally, the door clicked open. She was standing at the top of the stairs in leggings and a hoodie, hair pulled back, no makeup. And she looked more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. "I was hoping it'd be you," she said quietly. I climbed the stairs, soaked to the bone, unsure of what I was going to say. When I reached her, I just stood there, shivering slightly, hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the fear of what I might lose. "I'm sorry," I said. "Not just for the article. For everything." She didn't speak. She just waited. I thought success would fix it, I continued. The loneliness. The fear. The anger. I thought if I made enough noise, they'd finally listen. But all I did was drown out the one voice that ever really mattered. "Yours?" she asked softly. "No," I said. "Yours." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She just reached out and pulled me inside. We stood in her kitchen, water dripping from my jacket onto the tile, and I told her everything. About the way I used to rehearse conversations in my head because I was too scared to speak. About how I once sat in a bathroom stall during a middle school dance, counting the songs until it ended. About how, even now, I sometimes walk into a room and still feel like the punchline. And then I told her the truth I'd never admitted, not even to myself. "I don't want to be admired anymore," I whispered. "I just want to be understood." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Then let me understand you. The real you. Not the one in the articles. The one who slices his food weird, who rewatches documentaries because he likes the narrator's voice, who cries in schoolyards when no one's watching." I let out a shaky laugh. "I'm scared," I said. "What if you see all of it, and you leave?" She leaned in, forehead against mine. "I already saw it," she said. "And I'm still here." That night, I didn't sleep alone. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't plan anything. We just existed, two people, finally quiet enough inside themselves to let someone else stay. And in the middle of the night, as she lay next to me, her fingers laced with mine, I realized something I never thought possible. The mirror had cracked. And for once, I wasn't trying to fix it. I was ready to see what was underneath. Cassie fell asleep with her head on my chest. Her breath was slow and steady, like a lullaby meant only for me. And even though I was exhausted, my mind wouldn't rest. Not that night. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding in boardrooms, speeches, or interviews. I was here, with her, and the silence between us wasn't terrifying. It was peaceful. And yet, beneath that peace, a deeper truth stirred. A question I hadn't asked in a long time. What happens after the noise stops? The next morning, I woke up early. Cassie was still asleep, her hand curled on my pillow like she was holding onto something in a dream. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her apartment. It was small but warm, books stacked on windowsills, paintings leaning against the walls, a half-finished cup of tea still sitting by the sink. It didn't scream wealth. It didn't need to. It felt lived in. Real. And I realized how much of my world didn't feel that way anymore. I left her a note, simple, messy, written in Sharpie on the back of a napkin. "Didn't want to wake you. I'll call later. You make the world quieter. Thank you. M." Then I left. But I didn't go home. I drove. Without a destination, without thinking, I just kept moving until the buildings thinned and the trees grew taller and I found myself in a part of town I hadn't seen in 20 years. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Cracked sidewalks. Old bicycles chained to fences. Mailboxes leaning sideways. I passed the playground, the one I used to sit at alone, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. Then I saw it. My old house. 2 stories. Yellow paint, though it had faded. The porch still sagged a little on the left. Someone had planted sunflowers along the fence. I parked across the street and just watched. It felt like watching a movie of someone else's life. And yet, there I was. That boy, 14, too tall and too thin, pressing his face against the window while the other kids played outside. That boy who counted ceiling tiles to pass the time. That boy who whispered stories to himself at night, just to feel less alone. I didn't realize I was crying until a woman stepped out of the house, mid-40s, maybe, wearing gardening gloves and holding a watering can. She noticed my car. Tilted her head. Curious but cautious. I rolled down the window. "Hi," I said. "Sorry. I used to live here." She smiled, a little unsure. "Oh yeah. Long time ago." "Feels like a lifetime," I said. "I used to watch the world from that window." She looked up at it, then back at me. "You want to come in? See it again?" I hesitated. Everything in me screamed no. But then I nodded. "Yes," I said. "Yeah. I think I do." The house was smaller than I remembered. The stairs creaked the same way. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner. The woman introduced herself, Diane, and offered me coffee, which I declined. I wandered from room to room in silence, like I was walking through a dream. I stopped at my old bedroom. It was a home office now, printer in the corner, desk littered with papers, but the window was the same. I stepped closer, touched the frame. I could still see the faint notch where I'd carved a tiny M into the wood. That version of me came rushing back. Not the public version. Not the photoshoot version. The real one. I whispered to the glass. "I'm sorry." Diane must have heard me. She was standing behind me, arms folded gently. "Sorry for what?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer. I just shrugged. For leaving him behind. Back in the car, I sat in silence for what felt like an hour. I thought about the kid who lived in that house. The one who never got invited to parties. Who walked home alone. Who learned not to speak unless spoken to. Who used to stare at his reflection and wonder what he'd look like if he mattered. I thought about how hard I'd worked to become someone else. And how much of that kid still lived inside me anyway. Later that night, I called Cassie. She answered on the second ring. "I was just thinking about you," she said. "I went back," I said. "To the house. The window's still there." She was quiet for a moment. "How did it feel?" "Like breathing air I didn't know I missed," I said. "Like finally exhaling something I've been holding in since I was 12. Are you okay?" "I think I'm getting there." Another pause. "I want to show you something," she said. She picked me up half an hour later. Didn't tell me where we were going. We drove toward the edge of the city, where the skyline faded and the stars started peeking out behind telephone wires. She turned onto a narrow gravel path lined with trees. I recognized the place immediately. The old elementary school. She parked and turned off the engine. We got out in silence. She walked ahead, guiding me toward the backfield where the swings were still rusted and the grass still patchy. "This is where you cried," she said quietly. I turned sharply. "What?" "I remember," she said. "You were sitting on the swing. Alone. You had your hood up, but I saw you wipe your face." My heart pounded. "I didn't say anything," she continued. "I was scared. I thought if I sat next to you, people would turn on me too. So I walked away." I didn't respond. The air felt thick, heavy with something unspoken. She turned to face me. "I think about that moment a lot. About how I could have been the first person who chose you. And I didn't. I'm sorry." I swallowed hard. "It's not your fault," I said. "You were just a kid." "So were you," she whispered. "And no one should feel that alone." We sat on the swings. And for a while, we said nothing. Just two grown-ups swinging slowly in the dark, haunted by versions of ourselves we couldn't quite let go of. Eventually, I broke the silence. "You know what the worst part was?" I asked. It wasn't the bullying. Or the loneliness. It was how much I believed it. I believed I was forgettable. That I'd never be loved, never be chosen. I looked at her. But you changed that. She didn't look away. You let me. As we walked back to the car, hand in hand, I realized something. The boy in the window didn't need to disappear. He didn't need to be forgotten or erased. He just needed to be loved. And maybe, finally, I was ready to do that, for him, and for myself. Back at my apartment, I pulled an old box from the back of my closet. Inside were journals, drawings, photos I'd hidden away for years. I spread them out on the floor. Cassie sat beside me as I read aloud pieces of a life I thought I'd buried. She didn't judge. She didn't flinch. She just listened. And when I looked at her, really looked, I didn't see pity in her eyes. I saw understanding. And in that moment, I finally saw it in mine too. There's a strange moment, quiet, fleeting, when you realize you're no longer fighting the same battles you used to. You wake up one day and the armor you've been carrying for years suddenly feels too heavy, too loud. And for the first time, you let yourself wonder. What if I don't need it anymore? That morning, I stood in front of my mirror. No tailored suit, no camera-ready hair, no forced confidence. Just me. In a soft t-shirt and the same glasses I used to hide behind as a kid. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to change a thing. The past few weeks with Cassie felt like peeling off layers I didn't know I had. There were no grand declarations, no Hollywood-style redemption arcs. Just small things. Ordinary things. Like the way she made me tea without asking, always leaving the bag in a little longer than I would have. Or how she hummed under her breath when she worked, completely unaware of how calming that sound had become to me. Or how she never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was, even when that version was quiet, withdrawn, or unsure. That was the real miracle. Not the money. Not the success. Not the transformation. It was being seen, and still being loved. But life doesn't stop just because your heart starts to heal. One morning, I got a call from my agent. Big feature opportunity, he said. National magazine, long-form story, full access. They want the real you. I almost laughed. What does that even mean? I asked. You know, he said. The story behind the story. The kid. The trauma. The comeback. They're eating that kind of narrative up right now. You'd be a household name. I paused. Not because I didn't know how to respond. But because, for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a household name. I'll think about it, I told him. And I did. All day. That evening, Cassie and I sat on the balcony. The city stretched out before us like a restless ocean of lights and noise, but up here, it was peaceful. She was reading something. I was sipping tea. And my mind was racing. They want to tell my story, I said finally. She didn't look up. Whose version? I blinked. She set her book down and turned to me. That's always the question, right? Are you telling the story that makes you look impressive, or the one that's actually true? I swallowed hard. I don't know how to tell the truth, I admitted. Not all of it. You don't have to, she said gently. But you do have to stop hiding behind the parts that already feel safe. I looked down at my hands. I'm scared, I said. Not of what they'll write, but of what I might feel if I actually say it all out loud. She leaned in. Then say it to me first. So I did. That night, in the dim glow of our apartment, I told her everything I'd never said aloud. About the night I overheard my parents saying they didn't know what to do with me. About the time a teacher laughed when I said I wanted to be on stage one day. About the boy who pushed me into a locker and said, "Even your shadow wants to get away from you." I told her about the panic attacks I used to have before class. About how I'd pretend to be sick just so I wouldn't have to eat lunch alone again. About how every success I've had since felt like a performance, like I was impersonating someone better, cooler, more lovable. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. And when I was done, she took my hand and whispered something that shook me to the core. Maybe you were never invisible. Maybe they just didn't know how to see. A week later, I turned down the magazine offer. I didn't do it out of fear or rebellion. I did it because I realized I didn't owe anyone my pain. Not like that. Some stories are meant for quiet places. For balconies and soft blankets. For people who hold your broken pieces without trying to label them. Instead, I did something I never thought I would. I went back to my old school. They were having an alumni event, a fundraiser for the arts program. My name was still on the donor wall from years ago, but I'd never attended anything in person. I always sent a check and disappeared. But this time, I showed up. And as I walked those halls, something shifted. The lockers seemed smaller. The classrooms, less intimidating. I passed by the music room, the gym, the exact hallway where I once dropped my books and heard laughter echo behind me like gunfire. And I felt okay. Not angry. Not ashamed. Just okay. In the cafeteria, a group of students were putting up posters for their senior play. A shy boy with glasses accidentally bumped into me. "Oh, sorry, sir," he said, wide-eyed. I smiled. "No problem. What play are you doing?" "The Crucible," he said. "I'm Reverend Hale." I raised an eyebrow. Heavy roll. He nodded, then added quietly, "I didn't think I'd get cast. But I guess they saw something." I looked at him. Really looked. And I saw me. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a card, scribbled something on the back. "Call this number," I said. "My company sponsors scholarships for students in the arts. I think you'd be a good fit." His eyes widened. "You mean it?" "Absolutely." And just like that, something inside me clicked into place. Later that evening, Cassie met me outside. She held my hand as I stood on the steps of my old school, staring up at the building one last time. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like I just forgave a ghost," I said. She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "You ready to let him rest?" I nodded. "Yeah. I think he finally found peace." That night, we lay in bed together, the window open, the sound of the city humming in the distance. I thought about everything I had once wanted. To be seen. To be wanted. To be powerful enough that no one could ever hurt me again. But now, I wanted something different. To be known. To be accepted. To be me. Not a headline. Not a brand. Not a symbol of revenge. Just me. I rolled over, looked Cassie in the eyes, and whispered the words I'd been afraid of for so long. "I'm not trying to prove anything anymore." She smiled, sleepily, tenderly. "That's how I knew you'd finally come home." They never saw me coming. But the truth is, I didn't either. I spent so long trying to become someone they couldn't ignore, that I almost missed the person I was always meant to be. Not a whisper. Not a shadow. Not a ghost in the back of the classroom. But a man. A man who lived. And loved. And finally learned. He was enough.